Well, good day to you. It is April the 3rd, 2025, and as I always like to start in every video, I like to do two or three things. First, I want to welcome everybody who is coming to this channel. Welcome to Search for Signs, and also welcome back those people who have heard these videos before. I don't do that at every video, but I should. And I do appreciate it when you listen to these videos and you come back, and especially when you comment and ask questions and stuff like that. But I also, at the beginning of every video, I encourage everyone who wants to know more about Maitreya, wants to know more about the priorities of the teacher, wants to know more about the problems of humanity and how information that you can get from Maitreya already could help solve those problems, is to do your own research. Look into it. See if there's any truth to this information for you. And you can do that by checking out some of the information on some of the websites that I provided links for in the description portion of these videos, such as the Share International site. Link is at the very top. You can get the best background information there than you can anywhere else. So hopefully you'll check it out. And the information is free, so it's there for you whenever you want to look into it. Also, like I just said earlier, if you want to come back and join the discussion, post a comment, let me know what you think. If you have a question or so that you want to ask about what we talk about here, the best way to do it is just to post your question in the comment section. But you can also email me that question to searchforsigns@mail.com, and then I'll try to tackle it in the next video, and we can maybe learn more about this information by trying to answer a question. Now, it's been, a couple weeks since I put up a Q&A video, and I haven't had any questions since I did put up a video, and I've been chomping at the bit to cover a few things I wanted to talk about, which is what I'm going to talk about in this video. But truth be told, I was out of the country. I was in the Philippines visiting my wife's family and had a great time. Learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about that culture, learned a lot about the world, about the problems of the world by going there, and that's why I love going to the Philippines, because it takes me out of my little bubble, and I get to see the world differently than I usually do. And I have done it. This is the third time I've been there, and every time I go, I learn something new for sure. But what I wanted to talk about was based off of a comment that someone put up a few weeks ago, where they were referring to Maitreya as the Bodhisattva. And what is the Bodhisattva? Well, I'm going to talk about it in an esoteric way, and then I want to bring about really what I wanted to talk about in a more practical way based on this. Is Maitreya the Bodhisattva, and what is the Bodhisattva? Yes, he is, according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, the Bodhisattva, but what is it? Well, if you're a Buddhist, you would be familiar with that term, but you might not be as familiar with it or look at it this way as the way a student of esotericism would look at that term. The Bodhisattva is an office within the hierarchy of masters, and that's all it is. And Maitreya has been holding that office for the last 2,000 years and will hold it for the next 2,000 or so years. But he hasn't been the only one that's ever held that office, and he will not be the only one to ever hold that office. And there are other offices within the hierarchy that we will become more privy to as these masters become more known to us. But that particular office concerns humanity probably more than the others, because that has to do with the role of world teacher, which is also another name of that office. And Maitreya has been holding that office for the last 2,000 years, and will hold it for the next 2,000 years. But the world teacher, usually, historically, if we were to look at who and what the world teacher is always been a disciple. For the last 100 or so thousand years, humanity has not been aware of these masters, been totally forgotten about. But there have been some disciples throughout history that have held that role for humanity, have filled in for one of these masters. Jesus was one, Gautama Buddha was another, Moses was another one, Muhammad, Krishna, Rama, Mithra, Zoroaster, Hercules. These were all well-known historical figures, some known as and looked to as mythological, not Moses, but like Hercules. But he was actually a teacher that lived for a time and acted as the role of world teacher. But the office within the hierarchy is always held by a master, and that master worked through those disciples, just as the Gautama Buddha Buddha worked through him. Maitreya worked through Krishna. Maitreya also worked through telepathically by overshadowing Jesus and became the world teacher for this coming time. If you're religious and you love to read the Bible, well, ask yourself this question. Why is the fish used as a symbol throughout the entire New Testament? How many different references to the fish were used in that? Well, that was according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, was a symbol for Maitreya's role as world teacher for the age of Pisces, which is the age-old symbol for that constellation, Pisces. There's also a little line in the Bible. Ben used to always refer to it as a little vignette in the Bible, where Maitreya foreshadows his future role, which he's going to be fulfilling over the next 2,000 years, as the world teacher for the age of Aquarius. When it's written in the Bible, and you can research it, it's right before the Lord's Supper. Jesus says to the disciples, "Follow the man carrying the bucket of water up the steps and thus prepare the feast," which was a very oblique way, according to Benjamin Creme, of referring to Maitreya's role as the world teacher, as the bodhisattva for this age. Now, the Lord's Supper was written in a way, and most Christians don't look to it as this, but as a way of the future role of humanity, the coming together of humanity as one under the guidance of the Christ. Each disciple represented the 12 tribes of Israel, which the 12 tribes of Israel is a symbol for all of humanity, harmony through diversity in humanity, under the inspiration and guidance of Maitreya, or the Christ. That's what the symbol of the Lord's Supper was. I know Christians don't take it like that, but that's what it was written in there to mean. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, it has to do with a disciple who was present at the Lord's Supper, but he is now one of the masters, the Master Kudhumi. He was the Apostle John, which of course John was always known as the most loving of all the disciples, representative of the love of humanity in that way. But what does he have to do with this, and what practically am I about to talk about? Well, his role in the future, according to one of the masters, will be to open the hearts of all of humanity. Can you imagine how extraordinary of a job that is for anyone to do, to help open the hearts of humanity? But also, what kind of person or master would be able to do that? Well, this master obviously is capable of doing it. That's why he's chosen this role in the future. But he will eventually be the bodhisattva after Maitreya. But that's not important. But the opening of the hearts of humanity is. And the reason why I'm saying this is people who listen to this channel, people who are interested in this information, we might have different backgrounds, we might have different views on life, we might have different takes on spirituality or whatever, but central to all of us is a concern for the future of humanity. That's the reason why we listen to this information. That's the reason why I read this information with such earnestness as I do, because I'm deeply concerned about the problems of the world. Well, what does it have to do with this? What does it have to do with why I'm bringing this up about the bodhisattva, why I'm bringing this up about the Master Kudhumi opening the hearts of humanity? Well, if you're somebody like me who reads Benjamin Creme's master's articles, he says this a lot in these articles. The cause of all the problems in the world, and there are a lot of problems that face humanity today, the environment, the economic divisions, the political divisions, war, crime, terrorism, starvation, poverty, every problem that's facing humanity, there's one cause. Do you want to know what it is? It's a lack of love. And this is coming from Ben's master. This is what he says. Have you ever heard any president or world leader on the stage today or in recent history refer to the problem that's facing humanity is a lack of love? They don't talk about it because they're totally ignorant of that fact. But that is the truth. It is a lack of love that's causing all the ills in the world. There is one solution to bringing about manifested love, and I'm going to talk about this, and there's also something that we can all do individually that I think is important to look at too, to help manifest love in our life, because we can start manifesting this too, to help change the world. Be the change that you want to see in the world, right? But how do we change it globally? Well, I've been talking about this for the last 8 minutes or so. Maitreya can say it very simply because he already has. Without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future. Maitreya's job is to really show all of humanity just how important bringing about peace is, which peace is the start of manifested love. When we talk about peace on this channel, when the masters talk about manifesting love, they're not talking about it, and I sure as heck am not talking about it as some fantastical utopian concept that we will maybe possibly get to someday. They're talking about it in a very specific, measurable way, in real time, on the physical plane. It's called the principle of sharing. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to address the concerns that cynics might have about this, that it will not bring about peace. But that is the only way that Maitreya says we will bring about peace and give humanity a future. His job, again, is to show humanity just how important it is. None of us can really show humanity how important the future is dependent upon whether we try the principle of sharing, as Maitreya can do. Now, the principle of sharing has been shown to do this. There's actually historical evidence that the principle of sharing will bring about goodwill amongst the nations. It was called the Marshall Plan. So right after World War II, when World War II ended in 1945, it resulted in the defeat of the Axis powers. But Europe was decimated. There was a standoff between two former allies, of course, the United States and Russia. And the United States looked at this as an opportunity, but also a problem that they needed to solve. How are they going to keep the spread of communism from going to the west of Europe? Also, what would happen if we did not do anything? Would we go back into war again? This time, it might be a nuclear war because the United States had developed the nuclear bomb and so did Russia. So would that have brought about nuclear war? Well, the masters would tell you, yes, it would have brought about a third world war, which would be nuclear, which would end life on this planet, actually. Had we been allowed to just let Europe go and just do what it does, right? So what happened was a group of people in the administration under Truman, and with the inspiration of George C. Marshall, created this plan, devised this plan to where the United States would give excesses of resources to Europe. But that wasn't the end-all and be-all of it. Then, those nations that took those resources would eventually have to give back some kind of excess back to the United States, a lease-lend kind of thing. Our president today is the most transactional president that has ever existed, right? This would actually fall in line with what he likes because he likes transaction. He wants something back for what he does, right? Well, this could go along with that too. So maybe in the future, I don't know, maybe Trump will be right on board with the principle of sharing because it actually is a transaction. It's not a one-sided transaction. It's a two-sided transaction. So those nations gave back in excesses of what they took. It created an economic boom in the United States, very well historically written. In the 50s, there was this economic boom. That was because of it. But also, what happened to Europe? They rebuilt themselves. We did not fall back into war. It also created trust amongst nations that typically did not trust one another. It brought about goodwill amongst nations that typically were at war with one another. So not only was Europe at war for almost 20 years with World War I and World War II, but for centuries, it was not known as a peaceful continent. But when I list these nations, you'll see what I'm talking about. Austria, these are the nations that participated in the Marshall Plan. The United States, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, United Kingdom, and West Germany. So the nation states of Ireland did not go to war with the United Kingdom, but there had been conflicts between religious groups within there, and there had been other conflicts within nations, but the nation states themselves did not attack one another. Britain has never come in to try to attack the United States. The United States has not tried to invade Britain. West Germany has not tried to retake over dominance of Europe or anything like that. And those nations and the people of those nations typically, and on whole, trust each other better than the other nations of the world. Now, I always say this when I talk about the Marshall Plan. Imagine what would have happened had the United States done this with Russia, with China, with Japan, Central and South America, with Africa, and every other country on the planet. What would have happened? Would we have had the Cold War? Would we have had this nuclear arms buildup over the last, 40 or 50 years after World War II, right? Would we have had that? Would we have had the Cuban Missile Crisis? Would we have had the Berlin Wall be built? Would we have had the Korean War? Would we have had the Vietnam War? Would we have had 9/11? Would we have had this war on terror? Would Ukraine have been attacked by Russia? Would Palestine be, attacked by Israel in this way? Would we have done that? Or had the same result, nations trusted one another, just as these nations, these listed nations, trust one another better. None of those nations had invaded one another. What kind of what kind of present would we be living in had over the last 80 years, we didn't have the Cold War. We didn't have the Vietnam War, the Korean War. We didn't have 9/11. I just got through having to go through security and take all my shoes off and my belts off. We would not have even had to do all that, right? All the useless and needless lives that have been lost over the past few decades because of war and terrorism. Would we have been able to save those people and not had that? My answer would be yes. I don't think we would be living in the same world today. We would not have had to sit here and listen to the promises made and broken by people who think that posturing and sanctions and tariffs and attacking this country and attacking that country would bring about peace and security. We would not have had to listen to that and endure and suffer through people lying to us in the way that they have. We would be living in a totally different world. We would be living in a peaceful world. That's the thing. Now, all hope is not lost. Just because we haven't done it over the last 70 or so years doesn't mean we can't try it now. It's not until humanity sees just how important and how dependent our future is on the principle of sharing. That's Maitreya's job. To show humanity just how important it is. But he's also here to be the voice of the people. We already know that what has been tried hasn't worked. We already know that this economic division can't last. We already know that these political divisions can't keep going on. How many times have you yelled at the TV because somebody said something that you didn't want to hear, right? And yet, did they listen to you? No, of course they didn't. But Maitreya will be the voice for all of humanity. For all of humanity, because we already know the answer. We already know we got to solve these problems. But we're living in a world where competition is king. We're all conditioned to believe that competition and those that compete the best win. And we're seeing the devastating results of that. We listen to these, and I'm going to say it just like this, we're listening to these new gods. And why am I saying this? Because Maitreya called them out years ago, called them the new gods. The Donald Trumps of the world, the Elon Musks, the Jeff Bezos, the Mark Zuckerbergs, all these oligarchs that we have in the world today, that we listen to as a people, we listen to them. We jam microphones in their face and ask them questions and then listen to them. They're the only ones talking and being able to talk. And none of them have the answer. None of them are capable of understanding the answer. None of them are capable of even loving nearly enough at all. There's such a lack of love amongst that group because they're willing to sit there and watch the world go to hell in a handbasket so that they can make more money. And that's the truth of the matter. And yet we listen to them, and yet we ask them questions, and yet we expect them to have all the answers because they are the new gods. They have the money, they have the power, they have the influence, they have the voice, right? Well, the time is changing when humanity as a whole will have a voice. It's been said that Maitreya will galvanize and inspire all of humanity, but he will be the voice for all of us that have no voice. None of these people are willing to listen to us because we don't have the money to influence them. Well, when humanity has that voice, there isn't a single government agency that will be able to withstand the power of the people. That's the hope. And when Maitreya inspires us to the truth of the fact that we are one, the truth that the only way that we will survive as a humanity is to try the principle of sharing, well, that's when governments around the world will try it. It's going to be people power. The will of the people will be what causes this change. Not the world leaders deciding to do it amongst themselves. They're not going to do it because they've never done it. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot to what I'm talking about here, but it's all about seeing the problem. And the real problem is a lack of love. A lack of love among nations, a lack of love between different groups, and a lack of love individually. Now, how do we solve the problem of the lack of love for ourselves? How do we start to manifest this? Well, I read about this. I read this, a biblical verse from Romans 13, okay? And this is coming from Paul, who I didn't think was necessarily the most loving of apostles, but he definitely describes love in this way that, none of the other apostles did. But what did he say that was so important and so profound? Well, he said, "Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this, saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." And there's more to that verse, but that's enough to really talk about. He's talking about how that when you love, you can't lie. You can't truly covet what somebody else has. You don't want what they have. You want what is, which is to love. How do you love? How do you get about love? Well, one of the things that Maitreya said to me that I like to talk about with people is he said that he never judges anyone on whether they're good or bad. He only notices the good things that they do. That's a start. If you're critical, try it. See if it doesn't change the way that you look at people. Because it did for me. I was critical, and that's the reason why he said it to me, right? So I could learn to not be so critical of people. And when I did, it changed the way that I viewed people. I started to be a little bit more accepting of people that were irritating me. But here's the other thing too, okay? Maitreya's core teaching is the art of self-realization, realizing that you are the self. You are just as divine as these masters are. And he said the only way to do that is to practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. When any one of us practice those three things and experience those three things, honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, you love. And you're not going to do it perfectly the first time. You know what I'm saying? But you got to try it, and you got to practice, and you got to fail, and you got to practice, and you got to fail. What do they say about getting to Carnegie Hall? The only way to get to Carnegie Hall is to practice, practice, practice. Well, this is it. The only way to realize and manifest love is to practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Fail, try it again. Fail, try it again. Fail, try it again. Fail, try it again. And keep doing it and doing it and doing it. When we see these masters out in the world, it'll be a lot easier for us because we'll see perfect examples of this. But you can read about it in the Bible, the way that Jesus interacted with the people. You can watch videos of Krishnamurti. You can read the teachings of Maitreya already to learn how to do it. But it takes each and every one of us trying it, each and every one of us doing it. When you practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment, you can't want what somebody else has. You can't desire violence or commit violence on someone. But here's the other thing. Because these new gods that I speak of, the Donald Trumps of the world, the Paula Whites that people look up to, the Kenneth Copelands that people look up to, you can see right through their lies when you practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. You can see just how corrupt they are, just how inept they all are. And this is everyone that we see on TV today. The Elon Musks of the world, the Nancy Pelosi's, I can go on and on and on, the Benjamin Netanyahus. We can see just how bad they are because when you truly love, you can see right through everything like that. And then you know whether somebody's lying to you or not, right? But that's what we can do. The other thing too that I wanted to say and just end it with this is Ben's master said, why wait for somebody else to talk about unity? Why not start looking at it for yourself? Why not start talking about it amongst yourselves, amongst other people? And when you really put a lot of energy and time into unity and seeing unity, and the best way to do that is to read Benjamin Creme's master's articles on unity and then start to put it into practice. And like I said, fail, try it, fail, try it. Practice honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. See what happens. And if you can't do any of that, just try to notice one or good things that somebody and not notice the good or the bad that they are doing, but just try to recognize one or good things that they do. And see if that doesn't help. And then when the time comes for Maitreya to talk about how important the principle of sharing is, and this is the value of knowing this information now, you'll be so far ahead of the curve. Do your own research. Look into the Marshall Plan. See if it does bring about peace. If you're someone that's concerned about the environment, understand that the only way to save the environment is for nations to cooperate with one another and not to compete against one another. The only way to do that is to bring about the principle of sharing. If you are a part of a group that's very concerned about the environment and is trying to help the environment and bring about awareness of the dangers of what we're doing to the environment, introduce that to the conversation. The need for peace. The need to bring about peace. The only way to do that through sharing. There's so many ways that we can help by knowing this information and not just taking it and not doing anything with it. Taking it and waiting for somebody else to do something with it. Waiting for Maitreya to come out before we make any step into doing anything. We can start now. The world needs saving now, and it's for each and every one of us to do it. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for listening. You guys take care and enjoy the day, and I look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Have a good day. Hello, my name is Gary Willing. Last year I started a YouTube channel entitled Search for Signs. Since then I've put up hundreds of videos talking about politics, economics, the need to save our environment and so forth, and tying it into UFOs, crop circles, strange phenomena, of course healing waters, crosses of light, and those kind of things. Talk about why and how they're all connected. Well, what do I mean? I think that all those signs are pointing to the fact that the one awaited by all the world's religions, his name is Maitreya, is already on TV speaking directly to humanity. I talk about the need for peace through sharing the world's resources, and of course the need to SOP save our planet. If you want to find out more information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and how that's all connected into what's going on today, go to YouTube and look at Search for Signs.